Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks out there. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host on this Future Friday, and you guys are all the co hosts on the channel as we talk about all things tabletop role playing games, especially because it is Future Friday. We're going to talk about science fiction and especially the little niche portion of the tabletop RPG community about transhumanism and such. We tend to focus in on games such as Eclipse Phase and Altered Carbon and The Expanse and things of that nature. But we're going to really, in many ways, talk all things science fiction because I am a fan of that genre and especially in tabletop role-playing games. And you guys, as my co-hosts, are going to help me out here. Now, all week long, we've been talking about the subject of nomadic cultures and traveling and journeys and peoples, and of course, our protagonists, our heroes, our player characters, who are going to be traveling along these byways and highways and such, especially in fantasy gaming. But in science fiction, of course, when we talk about nomadic cultures and traveling, we're absolutely positively going to be going to other alien worlds. And one of the great things about, of course, science fiction is that when you go to these other alien worlds, we get to from the moment of inception of the minute we cross that threshold to see a giant world or an asteroid or a nebula or a new star system in their scanners, we get to change and develop and twist and design a place to give our player characters a challenge. Now, we as I do my little preamble, I like to give us a little bit of a context, a funneling, if you will, of where our mindset's going to go. So, for me, the idea of going to visiting and going to exoplanets, we are going to move beyond first contact. So while the player characters may be the first to physically arrive somewhere, that there's been some exploration here before, whether it's been as minor as like drones or satellites sent out or robots sent to explore a place, all the way to, but not including a planet that's been completely settled by humanity. Okay, and we're going to talk about that in between and the great things we can do with that in between. Like, people are there but they're not there, but we don't know which faction controls it, or there's this giant question mark over what's going on, where we lead our players to. And I think that's the great spot for us to be. uh, Dead Man brings up who's a armchair expert on Eclipse Phase, says in Eclipse Phase you'll have to bring up the scum swarms and their fleets of hundreds or even thousands of ships traveling constantly. Yes, for those who do not know, both in Eclipse Phase and in recent science literature, there is another gentleman. It's a huge YouTuber, Isaac Arthur, in Science of Futurism with Isaac Arthur, has talked about this idea of cyclers. And this relates to the fictional form of the scum swarms. So for those who don't know, in Eclipse Phase, there's a faction known as the Scum. And it is while being called scum sounds like a terrible thing, it's a term of endearment and identity for a group of people who have not settled any planet. And they travel in everything from asteroids to starships to hollowed out tin cans and whatnot that travel around our galaxy, our solar system, and probably beyond. And the Scum travel in what are known as swarms. It's basically not one starship that's going from planet to planet and habitat to habitat, but it's a swarm of these ships, a cluster, if you will, of things they've scavenged together or stolen or borrowed and whatnot. And their culture is, well, essentially nomadic. And one of the reasons why they still are in existence is because, on one hand, civilized society is like, oh, I hate the Scum. They are the epitome of all the stereotypes of what we don't like in our civilized society. They're unruly. They are unruly. They have no rules. They have no structure. They modify their bodies and their minds in ways that we don't agree with. But the other part is we love ourselves some scum. They won't admit it, but they love these scum swarms because they can be hired to do the jobs nobody else wants. They are the release valve for society. When people want to engage in things in society that are illicit, in other, drugs, sex, violence, gambling, body modifications, uh, other illegal activities, theft and assassination, and bribery, and the transfer of information, and you need to get it hidden or whatever. These types of groups that live on the edge of society can be used and abused by civilized society. So, scum swarms, sure, could they be like wiped out by law, the authorities or law enforcement? Of course, but no one's going to do it because everybody loves themselves. Some people who live on the outskirts of society and are labeled like illegals or criminals or untrustworthy and whatnot. And then, of course, the scum kind of embrace that a bit, that identity. Like, oh, you think we are a certain way? Let's live up to that stereotype, to use that as a tool. So, now, when it comes to exploring exoplanets, and I think if you can see this here, you'll see that. Let's close this down just a little bit. Oh, no, maybe you can't see it. Okay, so down in this corner, there's a digital map of the various swarm. Wow, my brain just went wrong place. Various exoplanets in the Eclipse phase universe. Now, again, for those who do not know, in Eclipse phase, there are exoplanets that can be reached by something called Pandora gates. They're stargates. It doesn't matter what their name is. It's a wormhole, big gate. Aliens created it. We don't know why they exist, but humanity kind of knows how to operate them. And if you've ever seen Stargate and the television show or the movie, you can guess that these round gates, if a certain code is put inside of them, or you attach certain types of machinery to get coordinates, that it will take you from one place to another. And some alien, ancient civilization that may or may not be dead left these Pandora gates behind in various locations in our own solar system. And so traveling through them, it allows us to instantaneously go from one place to another. The great thing about this as a story concept, and I'm going to, let's see if we can bring this up here. The great thing about these exoplanets and getting to them is that in the Eclipse phase universe, there's a whole faction, a whole part of the game that's literally dedicated to exploring exoplanets. There are a whole faction that's like, you know what? Our solar system, it's dead. We need to find another planet. We need to become extrasolar. We need to find other planets, other habitats to live, maybe an entire planetary system, a whole star system even, and and live there. Now, of course, that sounds good on the surface, but which faction is going to do it? What type of lifestyle are you bringing with you to go there? Is it a religious kind of doctrine that people are taking with them to go to these planets? Is it military or governmental? We have all kinds of governmental systems, from oligarchies to meritocracies to I don't know, psionicocracies or something. I mean, there's all kinds of things, especially when you talk about the far future. One's ruled by AIs, one's ruled by, cloning, a society of nothing but clones of a particular person's narcissistic endeavors, and so on and so forth. So, I thought I'd like to share this, to share out this image here of these exoplanets and where they are. Now, mind you, I'm not going to go through all of them, but if you take a look, you'll see that in this image, like for example, I'm circling here this word here where it says volcanoid gate, and there's a gate, this Pandora's gate near the volcanoid asteroids. And then as we start to move around, you'll see that it's color coded, and there are all these different um, planets and star systems and such where you can exit out onto the planets. Now, the arrival gate on the other end doesn't necessarily need to be on a planet's surface. It could be on an asteroid. It might be on an uninhabited moon, um, orbiting another planet and whatnot. So there's a lot of different things involved in exoplanet exploration. And the designers of Eclipse Phase, and I'm putting words in their mouth, but they designed this so that we as world builders and creators um, can use enough of our challenges to challenge the player characters in exoplanet exploration, right? So it may be very easy where, oh, there's just your PCs walk through a gate and it opens up on a jungle planet and they have to, go around a jungle planet. It could be as detrimental as going through a gate, for example, going through this Martian gate and going to the world of Krypton. Yes, there is Krypton here. It's only got 0.32 gravity, 0.32 G's in gravity. Okay, it's got an unbreathable atmosphere and has a high end tourism habitat there. And of course, we as the world creators can develop this as much as we want. So from tourism to science, next to Krypton, we've got, not next to it physically, but a gate to Nirvana, a place called Nirvana, is open space. There's zero gravity in open space. There's a station near a pulsar. It's a research center and Buddhists and a small prison. That's a strange collection of things to have together near a pulsar, but apparently there's a gate open up into basically open space. There are no planets around, or are there? But we can go on and on. There's so many planets that have been hinted at or talked about or referenced in the Eclipse Phase world, and of course we can come up with our own. Now, if we're playing something like Altered Carbon, or we have our own science fiction world, and I'll get back to the chat in just a minute. In our own science fiction worlds, we don't need to have wormholes or hyperspace or Pandora gates to do this. Although it does really help because it allows us, as storytellers, it allows us an easy opportunity to get our player characters back and forth from civilized society out there to these uncharted worlds. Now, I mentioned about this not being first contact, especially when you have like nomadic peoples and cultures and things of that nature. And the reason why I wanted to move past first contact is because this gives us the opportunity to, again, place other adversaries and other factions into the world as the players are traveling around these uncharted regions, and I like that. I like that a lot. Hey, Michael's like, finally made it early. Well, yeah, I think so. Yeah. Let's get this out the way here. Now I'll leave it right there. And as Deadman says, you can, along with having so many available that are already written up in the book, he says, or develop out the system of Olaf, a Dyson sphere around a brown dwarf. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to go back because I'll highlight this. Sorry, I'm going to shut or this down a bit. Here we have, because I love the idea of Dyson spheres. Oh my god! All right, so let's see if we could zoom in here just a bit more. If it'll let me do this. There we go. All right, so here we have Olaf. It's a Dyson sphere, and the gravity goes from like 0.78 Gs to 0.91 Gs. If you understand what a Dyson sphere is, you'll understand that scientifically a solid sphere around a star's in scientifically is a bit impossible. But of course, if it exists and we go there and we're like, well, who the hell built this and how could they do it? It's kind of awesome. Anyway, it's 2.1 million kilometers in diameter and has an orbital defense system. And the great thing about exploring a Dyson sphere is that um, a Dyson sphere is a shell built as far away from the star where the habitable zone is. So take Earth. Earth is 93 million miles away from our sun. Then Earth traces a circle around our sun, and then you build a shell around it, a ball, and then that becomes a Dyson sphere. And that, I think it mathematically, the land area of if you could build a Dyson sphere is in the trillions of times greater than what Earth's landmass is, something like that. Yeah. Vampiro, you're so silly. Dyson sphere is the ball part of those futuristic looking vacuums. Yeah. All right. So Michael brings up a comment saying, "Not familiar with Eclipse phase. What's the premise?" All right. So um, Eclipse phase is a role playing game like Altered Carbon, and there's some others out there. I don't know the names of them, so I apologize for not giving them credit. But it's a science fiction role playing game centered around transhumanism. And so transhumanism in science fiction is the idea of all of humanity's technology advancing at the same rate. So some science fiction is speculative, meaning like, oh, there's only giant robots, or there's only um, AI that's taken over the world, or it's only post-apocalyptic, or it's only alien invasion. Transhumanism is, it takes the idea that, well, technology has advanced equally amongst all of our various scientific genre discoveries, and to the point where we question what humanity is given enough technology. So um, when AI becomes indistinguishable from a human's brain in terms of thinking and creativity, is an AI a person? Or if you can download a human into a computer, is that just a copy of a person, or do they have a soul? If you want to go existential, are they still a member of our society? If you want to go a little bit more towards political or sociological, and so it's very extremely transhumanism, and embraces it. And in the Eclipse phase world and Altered Carbon world, not everyone, most of society has something called a cortical stack, which has changed society. And that cortical stack records everything that you experience. And that cortical stack can be removed from your body and placed into other objects, devices, or what they call sleeving. You can re-sleeve into another body, whether it's biological, so you can resleeve into, say, a cloned body of your own. You can resleeve into somebody else's body that's been put on ice, like in Altered Carbon, where criminals have their minds put into like a VR, and their bodies are put on ice and used by other people or into other machines, what we call synths in Eclipse phase. So you could be inside of a robotic body. And of course, when you talk about all that, biologically, they don't need to be human at all. And the game system is designed where your ego, your mental stats are separate from your physical stats. So it's cool. So it's really cool. Yeah, and it includes all that, because Mike Gould mentions, so it includes sentient robots, sentient AI, cyborgs, mecha, genetically altered humans, and so on. Yes, it includes all of that in a society that accepts all of that. The giant robot part, mm, yes. It's like, yeah, and it goes on to say, like, does it also include things like clones and vat-grown humans? All of that. Yes, and the cloning isn't really a thing in the game, but it is, because For the layperson, we think, oh, if I make a clone of myself, my clone would look exactly like me. In eclipse phase, a clone has a variable definition. So if you're talking about cloning a mind, that means you're copying a brain pattern. But that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the biological body. You can also clone a body by just copying the genetic material from one body to another, but the brain is something else. You could Somebody else's brain could be inserted into that body, like a spy or somebody from a different corporation or something like that. Tesla says it takes place after a World War III project to create artificial intelligence known as Titans has gone rogue, resulting in the deaths of over 90% of the inhabitants of Earth. So Tesla is mentioning that the is mentioning the fact that in the world of eclipse phase, we created a computer program that went to war with us and started wiping us out. And so, in order to escape Earth, or the fastest, most efficient way for humanity to escape Earth and go on to the rest of our solar system, which was minimally settled, physically many of us didn't have the resources to leave. So a lot of rich people could just get in a starship, boom, you're going. Military, boom, they get in a starship, they leave. But humanity had to download their brains into what's essentially beam their psychic, their neurological patterns from one place to another. In essence, the cortical stack recorded their brains. They were on Earth. They want to go to Mars. They beam their brain to Mars. It arrives there in a cortical stack, and then from there they are able to be downloaded in and used somewhere else. The problem with, and especially when it comes to, since we are talking about um, exploration and nomadic cultures and things of that nature, is that even in this future, a lot of humanity understands that it's probably easier for us to visit planet to planet as digital information rather than physically carrying our biological bodies and even mechanical objects with us from one place to another. And yeah, a wormhole, a Stargate helps a whole hell of a lot in that by just stepping through to one place that's 200 light years away. But before that happens, it's easier to send a signal from one place to another. So that signal could arrive if we send a drone or a 3D printer of some sort, a nanotech type printer to get there, set up a little base, start manufacturing mechanical bodies. We as humans beam our brains. Maybe we have a couple of AIs along with us to get there. We become mechanical human beings, humanity. We start building a settlement. Maybe we copy ourselves. Like if I'm an engineer, I could make a couple of copies of myself. So there's like 5 or 6 engineers working on the issue. Then we can start breaking out the little tubes of biological materials and so on and so forth, right? So Cam's like, what do you want to be when you grow up, Timmy? I want to be a USB drive. Yeah, yeah. Oh, I can't reach one right now. But yeah, I want to be a thumb drive in the back of somebody else's head. Yay! I played. Now, mind you, it sounds like, as I'm describing it, uh, it sounds like a Gonzo, unregulated type of world where there are AI and rogue robots and biological bodies and people copying their brains and beaming, and it is a little bit like that, but it's not a utopia. Now, of course, the destruction of Earth is in the eclipse phase world is one problem, but there is a society built around all of the technologies, and not everybody equally believes in all the things that are happening at the same time. Um, so yeah, so it's a pretty interesting thing. Uh, like Michael brings up, so in Marvel terms, a clone might be like the relationship between Wolverine and his genetic clone daughter X-23. Absolutely, absolutely. So you like someone who Wolverine has a clone. Now we consider that clone to be his daughter, which in some ways is genetically. If you have a child, they are a genetic offshoot of you, but technically they're brother and sister if you want to get genetically technical about it. Now that doesn't have anything to do with her brain. She doesn't have a copy of her brain. She was raised as a different person. But yeah, and then and those moral and ethical and sociological and societal thing complications are what I love about the game, because all of us can go like, yeah, ew, what? Huh? Wow, strange. I like all those things. Cam's about to mention the one thing I was going to bring up. Like, says, "Oh, it sounds awesome and super scary. People who aren't people anymore. What's left over?" And the question becomes, what what is people? Soylent Green, it's made out of people, right? What do you describe as people? And um not just what do you describe as people, but um how does each individual portion of society define what are people and what aren't people? It becomes extremely uh fungible. I guess would be a good term. Michael says, so a nomad might be just a mind being broadcast from body to body, world to world, essentially Ultron made real, but for humans. Yes, or the movie Avatar is a perfect example of exoplanet. Um, what technology today, and I know that the movie Avatar is, but thinking of the movie Avatar, the Avatar program in that movie is what Eclipse Phase and Altered Carbon could be, as a role playing game, and how we as planetary explorers may explore the world, right? We may not physically take ourselves from one place to another, but if we find an alien society, you make a biological body. Remember the Na'vi, giant blue people. We take our brains, we download our brains into these bodies, and then we insert ourselves into the culture and such, as opposed to needing to physically get in a spacesuit and travel from one place to another. And the game is set up, designed for that very thing. I mean, if the players arrive on a hostile world, gravity, the atmosphere, radiation, aquatic worlds, high and low temperature worlds, and things, our biological bodies might be too sensitive for it. But if we arrive in mechanical bodies or biological bodies that were adapted to a place, it's a gas giant world and we can have wings, or it's an aquatic world and we can be amphibian, just as long as we're there, and then go back to our regular bodies and stuff. Yeah, it's exactly like that. Yeah, Vampanoid brings up something, the ship of Theseus paradox, but with people. Absolutely, absolutely. And the the funny thing about the ship of Theseus, very quickly, ship of Theseus paradox is, you take a ship, an object, you remove one piece of it, you replace it with something new. You remove another piece of it, you replace it with another new piece. As you keep fixing the old object, the old ship, and replacing a piece with a new piece, and then you take the old pieces and start assembling them, at a certain point, when does the original ship of Theseus, now each plank being replaced with a new piece, remain itself? And then when you take the old pieces and assemble them together, when does one become the other, and which one is the real ship? So that's it. Sorry about that, Dead Man. Dead Man brings up, went all the way back to, here we go. The original post for Dead Man says, the creator of the game has most of the first edition books on his WordPress site, and the first edition of the game is actually free. It's all free. Digital wise, they're free. It's so good I would pay for it. Yeah. Cameron says, yeah, the human mind copied and pasted. Scary stuff, man. Yes, and not just copy and paste it, but you can actually modify it too. So in the game world, your brain can be modified. And as a matter of fact, one of the things that I've been a proponent of, which is why I've got so many Future Friday videos is in the game. Okay, I need to find a relationship. Total Recall, the television show, and the two movies involve our heroes, our protagonists, running around and going like, "Hey, I'm going to be a good guy," and then you find out, no, their personality has only existed for a very short amount of time because really they're the bad guy who altered their brain to be the good guy. So the question becomes, which brain is the real one? And if someone came to you today and told you, oh, by the way, I just need to let you know, all your memories, actually, they're not real. You've only been alive for like a month now, maybe 3 months at the most. Um, but you are actually part of somebody else who's just like you, who needs to cancel you, right? Would you consider yourself to be artificial if someone today told you that you were artificial? And the answer to that would be like, heck no. All right, so Michael brings up another noob question before we move on to this exoplanet thing. Another noob question: if there's a brain dead body that is still alive, does Eclipse phase account for a new mind in that body via download, like Altered Carbon? The absolute answer to that is yes. Most bodies are brain dead. They're sleeves. So you uh, in the game world, it's like putting on a shirt or a jacket. And so they call it sleeving. So you're a secret agent. Generally in Eclipse phase, you're a firewall agent. You're out to try to stop existential threats to humanity. Things like black holes, creating black holes and alien invasions and people getting their minds wiped out and AI war machines and all that kind of stuff. And so maybe you're on Mars and you need to go to a habitat orbiting Uranus. So the agency may already have a morph waiting for you, a sleeve waiting for you, and you then get beamed through an ego cast from where you're at to the location, the end result location, like in Altered Carbon, when Takashi, last name I won't pronounce, because you could I'm not getting into the argument of how his last name is supposed to be pronounced. When Takashi leaves Earth to go to Harlan's world, he's beamed. His brain is sent there as digital information and arrives at the other end, and then wakes up in another body. I.e., he's no longer Caucasian, even though he was born Asian, and then yet had another, I believe it was another Asian body he was in. He wakes up in what would be an African American's body, even though that body technically, both bodies that he was in verse season 1 and 2, talking about the Netflix show, were modified. So they had like combat, high adrenaline, great muscle features, boosted reflexes, and all that kind of stuff. Yep. Dead Man. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, Dead Man says a sleeve is a type of equipment in Eclipse phase. Yeah, your body is a piece of equipment. It's disposable. It's modifiable. It is not. It's the body you walk around in the game is just as disposable as the weapons maybe your character has. So yeah. Um, Also mentions memory alteration is a thing in Vampire too. This espionage angle in Vampire the Masquerade through the dominate discipline is huge. Mind modification is a big thing in Eclipse phase. You can have psychic surgery to remove trauma. There might be. I'm a huge proponent of starting adventures where the player characters may have lost a bit of their memory, and in the game there is an actual mechanical thing where you might wake up. Player characters can go on suicide missions to then be reinstituted, having lost hours, days, weeks of information because they're being rebooted from an old download, a brain that was kept on ice that doesn't have the 3 weeks that led up to the mission in which you were killed. So you could go on a mission. You could literally be a detective looking for who killed you, much like the first season of Altered Carbon, when Takashi is woken up and being used as a detective. Player characters can go around going like, "Who killed me?" I lost 3 weeks. What the hell happened while I was down? So Michael says, so if you have two exact duplicates of Timmy, which is the real Timmy? That's up to you. So moving back into hold off on the noob questions because you're going to have a whole lot more as I go into this. So exoplanet exploration is a thing in Eclipse phase that has been designed to not be Star Trek like. So if you understand Star Trek, every time Star Trek goes to a new planet, it was always an M-class planet, right? It was a habitable world where human beings can walk around in there with followed by your red shirts and communicators and blasters and whatnot, and go around on these alien worlds. And of course, it was because of budgetary reasons and things like that. Hey, we have to have our actors be somewhere. We need an alien world. Of course, they can survive on it. But Eclipse Phase specifically tries to make a point of making alien things alien. So the alien races that are included in Eclipse Phase are completely alien. They are non-human, difficult to communicate with, having very little to do with what humanity seems like. From They want you to create races that live in gas giants, that don't have humanoid features, that think in different time frames from very long to very short, that have a difficulty communicating, that don't understand what shaking someone's hand and unable to see the color blue and weirdisms like that. Maybe alien. There could be an alien parasitic race, or a race of viruses or something, or a psychic race that can't communicate in any other alien species that can't communicate in any other way. They specifically want you to do that. And the same thing with exoplanet exploration. They want alien to be alien. So the planets that the player characters go to can very easily from the onset be extremely toxic and hazardous. The radiation might be great. Gravity might be strange. The light from the star, whether not just a yellow star, but they could be pulsars, brown dwarfs, red giants, white dwarfs, pulsars, quasars, binary star systems, black holes, things like that. Like Michael brings up, I was going to bring, not yet because I always do it. And I'm trying to stop myself from doing it, but like says, for example, like the aliens in Arrival. Absolutely. Oh, let me turn this chat overlay back on. So yes, like the aliens in Arrival, they are alien. They have an alien. Hey, they were like literally like us writing on post-it notes. If you've seen Arrival, and if you haven't seen it, come on, it's been a while, so I'm not giving. Yeah, I'm going to spoil it a little bit, but their coffee stain ink drop language was just like, listen, squirt. I'm putting up against the glass. Can't you read this? And we're just like, oh, I don't understand. That's exactly what alien is in as a definition in Eclipse phase, and they want to keep it that way. Altered Carbon has aliens in their history because aliens are the ones that they found alien technology that allows them to create the cortical stack. So it has an alien history in it. Yeah. Michael says, "Oh my God, a psionic disease that needs hosts." Let me write that down. In the world of Eclipse phase, there's something known as a basilisk hack, and a basilisk hack is the the Titans, the rogue AIs that cause the downfall of humanity on Earth, can hack human brains simply by you looking at a computer screen. It's called a basilisk hack. Like in Dungeons and Dragons, you see a basilisk like a Medusa, you stare into it, and then all of a sudden, well, a basilisk hack, because people have cortical stacks in their brain, they have computers in their brain merged together, the hack as code is imprinted into your brain because you've seen the code. The code then gets copied into your brain. That code then hacks your brain, much like hackers hacking pipelines in our modern context, and then it can become a Trojan horse of a program which can hypnotize you, make you forget things, make you act in like, oh, I'm going to go to sleep, and then all of a sudden you wake up and start doing things that you have no control of and whatnot, etc. Yeah, Deadman says Fringe had a program like that. Absolutely, yeah. Oh yes, hell's yes. that's a hazard in the game. Basilisk hacking, being hacked by things like that, really exist, and the dangers of traveling to other worlds is an issue because there's a lot of things out there that are super dangerous. Nanotech, viruses. Again, talking about just the physical idea of putting on a suit and going to an alien world where it comes to, um, acidic and unbreathable atmospheres and things of that nature. Dead Man says, in universe lore says the Basilisk hack came out before the Titans. Ah, okay. Learn something. Yeah, it came out before the Titans development, and in the Game Master section of Eclipse Phase, they leave lots of space open so that we, as the person running the game, can kind of decide who and where and what is the antagonist in your world. Like, was the rebellion of the Titan program, did that come from an alien species out to wipe out Earth? Was it a program to cull humanity down because they were getting too big? Was it? It's a bunch of different things where you can like turn the knobs of who did what when in your world to create the background for it. The to create the oops, sorry about that. To create the reasoning behind what the hell's happening. Vampanoy, a basilisk hack in a TikTok video of kittens. Then I'll have to say that I've been imprinted far too many times. Oh man. Cameron mentions I think the tension of a character having an environmental suit on to particularly one wonderful on particularly wonderful for gaming. You're just one puncture away from a terrible death. I love the see, thank you, Cam. I love the idea of having a proverbial and real thin skin between you and death happening. Now, we know as both scientifically and as portrayed in The Expanse that like explosive decompression isn't technically explosive, but that's a good thing because players that might not want to run and gun shooting guns on habitats, or if they land on an alien world and there's like dome cities that have been constructed, or they're driving in an overland machine like the television show Lost in Space is a really good example of this, where they're driving in like these giant ATV moon rover things, and you start punching holes in it. Sure, it may not instantly explode, but the idea that you have to stop and go, all right, do I fire my rail gun one more time, or do I stop to pick up a patch to put on my suit or on the membrane of the city walls or the vehicle or whatnot? And having that complication, I think, is awesome because, yeah, on one hand, player characters love being kick ass. On the other hand, nobody wants to walk around naked. So yeah, at all. Um, Dead Man brings up the fact that one of the pre-made modules for Eclipse Phase called Ego Hunter, yep, is about playing as forks, duplicates of a person that have to find the master persona so they can be recombined. Um, just giving a little bit of detail in that Ego Hunter, and it's actually a profession where okay, you play as player characters, and all of you think you're different, but in Ego Hunter, what you are fragments. Each player character is a fragment of one individual. So all of the player characters, if they were to combine all of their memories, all their skills together, is actually one protagonist. I mean, one antagonist. And a one cool story is to make up your player character, only to discover that you're just a small fragment of a original, more reconstituted personality out to hunt you down. So I think that's a great storyline for a player character, and I love that. Um, Michael says, okay, so a sentient swarm of nanites that rewrites hosts to explore new worlds, evading the AI that created it. Oh, and go. Yeah, and go. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. You great game to do that in, and I love it. And That's why I like I used to be a person that was a bit of a hater for the exoplanet thing, but I love it because you get to have a brand new playground. Maybe the player characters are like eliminators of trying to kill off the last remnants of the rogue AI nanite systems that are cre- starting to build factories on these alien worlds, or maybe there's a political faction that's been trying to overthrow and destroy humanity's last hopes of reconstructing itself. Maybe they're extremely nihilistic, and the player characters are going around to take out these factories and power stations and things of that nature. Heck, being an assassin in this world is very difficult because you would have to go after every copy of a target's memories that might be on ice, and so they an adversary can keep coming back over and over. Um, Rickard says you can make them feel badass while still patching the dome wall through their suit, though. Yeah. Oh no. I didn't mean to make that seem like it was one or the other. Um, Although it would be pretty badass to be firing your gun with one hand and throwing up a patch on the wall with the other one, which is the whole point. I guess I meant to let me be more descriptive. Um, Giving player characters more problems than they can solve in the number of actions they have is a small part of a great way to make things difficult for your player characters. I guess that's what I mean. Is the equivalent of fantasy characters running across a rickety old wooden rope bridge, right? It's the yeah, I can shoot a fireball and I'm a great archer and I can hit things with an axe, but I also don't want to push my foot through a rickety old wooden beam or um, fall off of the bridge or grab onto a rope or jump off of it onto one of those goblin riding pterodactyl riders. You know what I mean? Like it's the equivalent of that. It's like, oh, I've got 8 things I need to do, and I've only got 3 actions. What do I do? Rah, rah. And I like that. I like giving players like, oh yeah, by the way, air's leaking out, the gravity is changing, your ship is re-entering the atmosphere, the shell of the habitat is being eaten away by the acidic rain, your um overland rover is slowly sinking into a methane ocean or something. Like it's all that kind of stuff put together with players like trying to have to pilot and run around and shoot things and run away from things and reprogram, all trying to all happening at the same time. And I love it. It could be complicated, but I think it's no more complicated than doing the same thing in like Dungeons and Dragons, writ large. So Corey Hollenbach says, "Love this, running a Stars Without Number game next week, hoping to get some inspiration." Oh yeah, yeah. There's a whole backlog of this this BS. So hell yeah. Um, I think the other thing too is I think it gives us the ability to not just kill or be killed adventures, but to have another objective in between the kill or be killed adventure. All right. Michael's like, voting rights for nanites, voting rights for nanites. Yeah. Um, okay, so for example, if we are exploring other worlds, here's some issues that player characters might be involved in. Reestablishing communication, which just reestablishing communications with a lost colony or something could be all kinds of issues. Is it because of like solar flares? Is it because of the saboteurs? Is it because of something that humanity didn't realize that was affecting communications, like strange magnetic waves or satellites in the air or the power goes out and whatnot? Maybe it's necessary for player characters to bring a MacGuffin from one place to another. Medicine, technology, new vehicles, genetic materials, food and or water, prisoners, transporting them from one place to another. Maybe player characters are there to investigate a murder in a relatively small habitat of a few hundred people, and it's like it's a bottle episode with your gamers. Like, okay, well, let's see. the murderer has to be here, and there's only a few hundred people, so they can't have gotten far. And if they left this place, we would know it. So who did it? Um, Also, the idea of NPCs and adversaries and in a small confined space. So habitats, vehicles, starships, these are small confined spaces. And while, yes, everybody wants to beat ass on the bad guys, the problem can be that doing it with the wrong equipment, right? Using your fists is probably far better than using that laser pistol in an enclosed space. And maybe that laser pistol is more effective in doing it, but maybe you can only use it once before puncturing the hull of something. So that might be an issue. And when it comes to the complication of physically capturing someone as a digital entity, not knowing if both their body and or mind is being duplicated somewhere else and or being teleoperated from some other location. Like, for example, player characters might be in a habitat orbiting an alien world, and drones land on the ship and start like using laser beams to like cut through to go inside. Well, maybe they're being operated from an enemy that's on the dark side of a moon around this world. So now the players have to deal with who's doing it to us, stopping the drones, finding out if there's even going to be further attacks, saving themselves from getting exposed to the outside atmosphere, et cetera, right? So that kind of thing. Cameron says, I think a lot of sci-fi that has multiple alien worlds tend to focus on how many of those different worlds the characters can visit. But it's refreshing when only a few planets are focused on. And that's why I love the idea of like our own solar system that this is weird to say. I don't think we give enough love to Uranus. I think we need to worship and embrace and just visit Uranus as much as possible. Um, I think anyway, but you get my point, right? Like we have things in our own solar system that are strange and bizarre enough, like that big red giant storm that's happening on Jupiter as we speak right now, and the rings of Saturn, and so many asteroids that exist, whatnot. Ricker's like, so you want to probe it? Yes. If you don't mind, I'd like to take a deeper look in Uranus and see what's down there. I'm pretty interested. Like, I like, what's it look like? What's it taste like? How does it feel? Um, yeah. Oh man, like Dead Man says, like Star Trek with a new planet every week. Yeah, I guess. What's the game? Monster of the Week. It's Planet of the Week. I mean, it. Listen, on one hand, it is cute to have Planet of the Week stories. There's nothing wrong with that, but Cam is mentioning about how science fiction tends to go world to world rather than like, hey, why don't we focus on like one world? Like, for example, you could just pick one world, maybe two, couple of moons, a few artificial habitats orbiting this star, and then just play right there. You could have a whole, not campaign, you could design a whole role-playing game where there's one planet, maybe two, a couple of moons, a few habitats, and that's it. Mike Mike Gould's like looks over his shoulder for YouTube police. I make sure these are marked for not for children. And listen, as sarcastic as I was being, about deep diving down into Uranus, I'm being literal about the planet. Like I'm being serious. Like I don't know what that world's like. It's in our own solar system. We don't know what's there. What's the gravity like? What's the makeup of this gas giant? What kind of core does it have? We know scientifically that we expect what we think we know, but we don't know. Cam's like, woo! The sirens going off. YouTube is like, shut up! We're gonna cut you off right now. Yeah. Yeah, Deadman's like, yeah, new planet every week. Oh, man. Rickard says, me, the DM, enjoying life. My players, let's do a Planet of the Week sci-fi game. Me, the DM, looks at the world building notes I made for one world. Oh, God. looks back to my players, runs away screaming. Yeah. Now, okay. Um, this could probably be a whole episode, but uh, when you're talking intergalactically speaking, when players have like give them a starship, they will run every time, right? We know this. It's like giving your player a the the teleportation or flying spell in Dungeons and Dragons, right? Here's a cloak of flying, and then you go, "Don't! Oh, why did I do that?" Because they're going to fly away from every problem. So if they have a starship, if they got the Millennium Falcon, they run. And guess what you always see in Star Wars with the Millennium Falcon? The hyperdrive fails. So in this instance, when we talk about going to alien worlds and you kind of want to keep them, and this is a dungeon master's like side note, and this is for players too. First of all, players, if you're game master, your person running the game designed one world, don't leave. Don't just. I know it's meta. I know you want to start lighting fires on your far future taverns and running away, but don't. All right. Now, as game masters, here's how you keep them there. Foreshadow the problem of leaving early before the players get there. All right. Listen, we've got a laundry list of technology that's perfect, except it doesn't work. Things. Okay. Solar flares, magnetic disruptions, gravity, ran out of dilithium crystals, a communication that doesn't work, a some kind of rotation where it's going to take too long to rotate back to a place to get beamed off, leave, refuel. Maybe there's a rebooting situation. Your starship lands and it's like, well, we have to stay for 185 days to resupply. There's so many ways to navigation systems that need to recalibrate. The idea that a wormhole only opens and closes at a specific time and date or energy disruption or injection or something. Foreshadow the problems far ahead of time so that when you tell your players who want to jump into their Millennium Falcon ish ship and leave after causing trouble, they can't. I know it sounds railroady. It's more quantum ogering. Okay. Like, no, they can't leave the planet. Yes, they can do whatever they want on the planet, right? It's not saying that they can't solve the problem of whatever's happening on world. It's players, please stop just throwing a monkey wrench and leaving. Please stop doing that. Yeah, Cameron's like tribbles everywhere. Yeah, in the Dead Man says in the D20 Star Wars game, it said that hyperdrive could fail at any point as long as it was needed to make the plot work out. Yeah, yeah. How come the Millennium Why is it the Millennium Falcon has or doesn't have hyperdrive? Because of plot, right? It's a shame to have to say that, but that's true, right? So some people have asked because they've actually shown, going back to Star Wars, the crew in the Millennium Falcon going through hyperspace. You see the lights going by or whatever. It's like, well, how long does it take them? I don't know. It takes as long as the speed of plot, right? It's how long does a conversation take to have between the player characters before they arrive at the next planet? It's plot driven, right? You get there when the conversation ends. You get there when the scene ends. Okay. Even if a player is like, well, I want to start to repair my little robot buddy. How long is it going to take? I don't make a die roll. Here, spend your resource, make a die roll. It took you as long as it took to fix it. You already arrived at the other end, right? That's why time dilation, which is a real thing in science, we don't put into role playing games because time dilation removes the tension of getting from A to B and in interacting with people who are in A and who are traveling to B. Because if every time you travel, everything you left behind keeps changing, then you really have players that are like, grenade, toss it, ha ha, set on fire, run, and fly away. So yeah. And lastly, you could just be straight up front with your player characters, right? Just let them know, like, guess what? If you don't know, yeah, um, there's a thing where you're not going to be able to do it. By the way, uh, Dead Man brings up the fact that in a Discord that there's the user Sai on the Posthuman Studios Discord server if you want fan made materials for Eclipse Phase. There and if I'm not mistaken, they are the creators of Eclipse Phase are huge proponents. They support all fan made materials, and there's actually an OGL, an open gaming license for it as well. I don't know the details of it. Yeah, Tesla it puts in the list of different governments of which I actually had to go use before. But all right, guys. So just as a let's go ahead and replace this here. So just as a reminder, traveling to other worlds, going to let me bring this down so you guys can see the entire thing. Traveling to other worlds, going to exoplanets, having the player characters maybe even be responsible for the uh, being responsible for the well-being of another group of people in and of itself, I think is a great aspect to put into the game, where they're responsible for maybe an intergalactic habitat of colonists that have already arrived, will are arriving now, or will in the future, of building a settlement, of doing everything from getting things ready for colonists to arrive, to having colonists there and having to move them from one unsafe place to another safer place, of of a faction, a government, either rival or ally, who must settle somewhere, and the player characters must get the place ready for them. Maybe there's a colony that's growing larger and larger, and the player characters become the law enforcement portion of that. Maybe the player characters are spies and they have to incorporate themselves into a group that's growing and shifting, and or maybe there's sociological changes happening that the player characters don't like. A new faction grows that becomes more draconian, and the players are like, wait a minute, we didn't agree to this. We want to share and share alike. And they're like, no, everything belongs to me. You got to come through me first. We've seen this story of the away from civilization, and the conflict of bringing your old baggage into the future, right? Your old ways into a new land, people taking old ways and destroying them and coming up with new ways of thinking. So, hey, new place, new start, new ideas. There's also the narcissistic individuals that are like, oh, I'm in a new place. I'm going to do whatever the hell I want because there's no one that can stop me. In many ways, if you want to take a look at examples of this, take a look at what classic Westerns uh, that have become, for a long time, became an epitome of storytelling in the United States, where you have people, settlers and whatnot, that moved from east to west across the uncharted United States, interacting with what native peoples and settling, and robber barons, and or cattle barons, and oil, and railroads. Those things can just be turned into science fiction ideas of people moving from one place to another as well. Gold rush and all that kind of business is perfectly matched for science fiction. Yeah, Mike Gould mentions that Heart of Darkness is literally that concept. Yep, going from one place to another, moving um, people, uh, losing the tendrils of society when they go from one place to another where there are no rules to hold them back, and you end up finding out what people really are like. Lastly, Cameron says you could have the ship crash in the wilderness of a new planet, and then the characters have to learn what they can and can't use by trial and error. The That concept has been done a plenty of times. Maybe not science fiction wise, but I'm saying, like, in our world, helicopter, plane crash, ship, deserted island, go somewhere. Now you have to figure out how to survive. And I think that'd be awesome. And the thing is, you don't even have to take things away from the player characters. Just go like, hey, way 86 kilometers away, our ship broke up. That's where our communication antenna is. We need to go from here to there, right? our ship broke apart, and let's get our data together. Wow, that fell into the ocean, that landed on a mountainside, that landed in a jungle, that landed in a desert. All right, guys, we're going to have to do a go to a circumference to go around and pick up all of our stuff. And even that adventure could lead to them like what aliens are out there. Yeah. Michael brings up enemy mind, right? Enemy mind. Two battling aliens and humans battling each other. Boom, they land on a planet. One has to fight the other. The other doesn't trust the other. And then all of a sudden, what happens? The world has strange conditions, and the human being finds out they're not neither male or female, but they give birth, and what happens then, and trying to survive. Yeah, oh hell's yes. Hell's yes. And I like the trial and error thing that you mentioned there, Cam, about like, I'm going to put on the power armor, and you find out it's only got 37 hours of power left in it. And it's going to take you 26 hours to walk across that desert. And everyone's like, I'm not dragging that thing behind me. And they're like, yeah, but I'm going to use up all the power to walk across. So what do we do? And they're like, well, better put it in a lean-to or something and drag it. Um, Rickard says planets in sci-fi often just becomes a planet-sized neighborhood, or at best a nation that we have in a fantasy game. You can't world build every planet so they get shrunk down to be more one note. That's why. Listen, Star Trek, Star Wars, they're guilty of this, right? Where in Star Wars, it's the one biome world that's part of that universe. It's the frozen world, the desert world, the aquatic world, the jungle world, right? And then in Star Trek, it, they almost universally encounter people that, oh, that entire alien species has one government with one people that seem to dress all similarly and has all the same language, right? It can be daunting to try to create every planet and every nation and every nuance in every world, but maybe it behooves us to actually try that a little bit. That you know Listen, if we met aliens that were as complicated as us, we would hate those aliens. We would be like, don't put us in your galactic society. And they're just like, why? I don't understand. We've got 37 languages and 87 different governmental systems and 51 different types of financial systems and all. I mean, you're just like, what's so complicated about that? you know? Oh man, Cam's like, I wrote a solo RPG based on a time ship breaking up over a set of islands for a friend who was in rehab. Haven't even played it yet. I don't know if it's good, but I like the concept. There's a Kickstarter by uh, uh, Iron Sworn is a solo RPG that can be played with a group as well, and there is a future version of it. And I don't know the title of it. It's the Kickstarter's out right now. Let's see. Kickstarter. Um, Iron Sworn Star something. Starforged. That's it. Starforged. Um, Sean Tompkin, Iron Sworn Starforged is what it is. It's taking a while for it to come up because I'm broadcasting and whatnot. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for just being part of the. There it is. I'll copy and paste it, I guess. Thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. Didn't really get to go too much into the uh, into the idea of like exoplanet development and things of that nature, but I do appreciate. I really do appreciate the idea that you, even though you might not be interested in science fiction, or if you are, because science fiction just happens to be close to my heart. It's to me, it's the unsung hero of role playing. And so I really appreciate all that happening. By the way, just let people know what's going on. I don't know what next week's subject is going to be. I really don't, but it's some, you guys brought up something, and I'll probably fall asleep and develop it later in my head to figure out what it is. So again, Really appreciate it. Thank you very much, you guys, for just being part of the show. Please like, share, subscribe, spread the word. Just let people know and invite them in. Maybe there's somebody you know that's like, hey, why don't you just stop by and see what's going on with the channel? And of course, we broadcast on now. We're also broadcasting on Facebook off of my Facebook page. I mean, Facebook, so you can link in there. So if you want to watch it on Facebook or Twitch or YouTube or to listen to it in the Discord server, please just go ahead and do that as well. So, guys, thank you very much, everybody. Have a great one. I'll see you later. Have a great weekend. Peace.